Forged by the Apocalypse by M.T. Conboy. Chapter 3. Attributes. My mind ran red with rage as I swiped the system prompt away. I'd felt the domineering power of the system, and I knew it wasn't fucking around. 3 bosses before I could leave. I thought back to when I had free time playing video games and grimaced. Flashes in my mind of game over screens, villains laughing in the background, laid a deadly premonition in my mind. There was no continue option in real life. For all the casual wording, the system had just told me to kill 3 others. Not just that, it would reward me for it. Even if I considered myself as an objectively good person, I felt the immediate draw. The feeling of placing 3 points into my attributes was like a drug, and the idea of not completing this quest made me feel weak and clammy. Withdrawal symptoms. I felt frustration pile onto my already beleaguered mind. There were so many questions, so much I had no way of figuring out. So much blood. A waft of warm air carrying a metallic tang of iron found my nose. I turned and immediately heaved the contents of my stomach into a nearby bush. A shockingly crimson flood escaped my lips, acid mixed with blood so thick it burned my throat, even with my newly upgraded fortitude. Absolutely disgusting, I lamented, rubbing my mouth pointlessly. My clothes were drenched in blood too. Looking back at the door to Clive's, I set my jaw. Something unexplainable had happened inside, but the more time passed, the more I knew I had no control over the horrific events. Even knowing that, the scene I had just witnessed, just been a part of, was burned into my mind forever. I knew that I would obsess over the events in there, but did I have to? If my thoughts were a case of an uncontrolled mind, could I not give myself more control? Casting my eyes about, the park seemed mostly unchanged. Wasn't it supposed to be a dungeon now? I wasn't complaining, but seeing the brisk spring afternoon was just as jarring as anything else right now. It was impossible to tell whether my vomiting had alerted something waiting in the tree line, but for now I seemed alone. If what the system said was true, no one would be joining me until they were level 18 themselves. How long would that take? I flexed my hands, the numbness of shock thankfully gone. My fingers felt strong. Turning to the other side of Clive's door, I wrapped my hand around a bush to the opposite side of the one I had just ruined. I planted my feet near the base, and I gave it a solid heave. I yelped as the ground gave way underneath me, the roots of the shrub dislodged with my pull. I ended up on my back. What the fuck? I started sputtering as dirt fell into my mouth. That was far too easy. I stood slowly, suddenly scared of my own strength. Was that really just double my previous fortitude? I had placed points into the attribute, certainly, bringing me from 5 to 10, but even 2 of me shouldn't have been enough to dislodge the deeply rooted bush. A big smile came to my face. It was tempting to shove every 3 point I had into fortitude right there, but ignoring the 3 other options would be foolish. My smile grew as I looked at my attributes again. I guess this would be my character page? The 63 free points were basically screaming at me to spend them. Going even another step further into the unknown without doing so would be crazy. With a shrug, I threw the last of my caution to the wind and started experimenting. First, speed. Boosting it to 10, I tried to pay attention to the changes my body underwent. The process still felt like being given pure, undiluted euphoria. Upgrading fortitude had felt like my blood became a flame which eclipsed and seared away the pain I'd felt at the moment. Speed was a different beast altogether. My veins became completely frigid for a moment, all of my muscles locking in the worst cramps I had ever felt. Before my bunched muscles could scream out in pain, the sensation passed, and I was once again left with the intoxicating feeling of power. If fortitude could be described as strength and constitution rolled into one, then speed would be dexterity and perception. The world noticeably slowed down for a few moments before time resumed its standard march. I immediately saw a danger I had been close to tripping. While upgrading fortitude would make me faster, I would need to keep speed relative or I wouldn't be able to keep up with my own movements. 4 points into speed, and then 4 more split between mental and will. Placing points into mental gave me a quick brain freeze, while will made my chest burn like acid reflux. Both sensations were fleeting, and replacing them was a level of comfort I honestly felt bad for feeling. Unlike fortitude and speed, the advantages to these attributes were a little more esoteric. My mind felt clearer, though. It wasn't as though I had changed as a person immediately, but there was a strength of conviction behind my thoughts which pushed away lingering doubts. Quicker decision-making from mind, and bravery from will. I was definitely a part of it. With points now placed into each attribute, something new stirred within me. What the hell is that? While my attribute points were limited, there wasn't necessarily a right choice on what to upgrade. I still had 55 points to allot, so I decided to take a gamble. With confidence, I slapped 10 points straight into mental at once. My newly forged brain told me this was a bad idea even before the whiplash hit. An ice pick drove straight through my brain and out of my eye. I clasped my face, but there was no actual damage, and the pain disappeared quickly. Compared to the brain freeze which 2 points gave me, this was many magnitudes worse. Okay, noted. 1 attribute point at a time. Despite the distraction of pain, due to my strengthened faculties, I was more than able to focus on the other sensations within. Just like my heartbeat, there was another process unconsciously occurring inside my body. With each point into the mental attribute, the automatic sensation became clearer and clearer. I mean, there's no way. But the existence of a mental attribute, or intelligence, suggested something I was scared to get my hopes up for. Punching stuff really hard, or being too quick to touch, seemed like cool superpowers for sure. 50 points into fortitude might turn me into an absolute monster. I might even grow, turn green, and rip all my clothes off but the purple boxes underneath. But that wasn't my ideal. The world had shattered, at least for myself. If by some miracle I was the only person affected and given these strange powers, then maybe things would be fine. I could get myself locked up and experimented on, or just disappear into the wilderness. In more likely circumstances that I was just one of many suddenly shoved into a world which killing could make you stronger. Maybe being locked in a dungeon wasn't the worst thing that could have happened to me. Having godlike strength would become the standard, for certain. Even as I decided to risk it all on another path, I knew it was a sensible choice. Even without any further information, suddenly being able to lift a car over your head would always be helpful. Becoming so fast and dexterous you could escape any bad situation was tempting too. Dum. Nope. I rejected those paths, at least for now. Maybe at 10 points of mental I could have ignored the feeling, but at 20 I was certain. Underneath my heartbeat, there was a slightly weaker thumping. It had been almost silent before, but I could tell it had been there since I awoke. Why was I even surprised? Its existence had been proven a dozen times over in the last hour. Magic. Even knowing it was going to feel like swallowing burning coals, I threw 10 points into will at once. If fortitude and speed were linked, each one needed to make full use of the other, then the same was likely true for mental and will. I was right on both counts. I burped as the heartburn came back, then screamed as it intensified into magma in my throat. My heart had turned into a small sun, and I needed to claw it from my chest. That raised mental attribute helped me keep my mind in check during this pain. I focused instead on the sensation of magic in my veins. If adding points to mental had raised the volume of the beating, adding points to will upped the tempo. Still, it wasn't enough. The sun winked out. I knew now with certainty there was something I was still missing. It was agonizingly frustrating. I had just told myself not to do this, but I was so close to understanding the strange feeling that I probably overdid it instead. 30 points of my remaining 35 went directly into mental, and I placed the last 5 into will. Then I braced. Oh shit. I probably did swear, but I couldn't hear myself over my own screaming. The immediate glacier that appeared where my brain had been served to shut out everything but the pain which appeared in my head and chest. If my mind had frozen, my heart had ignited. The miniature sun came back and tripled in size. I wouldn't let this be a mistake. Pain was just a message from the body that something was wrong, so I focused on where the pain came from. Logically, I knew I should be fine, as I had been each other time I added to my attributes. This helped me sequester the pain to one side and grab hold of the river of flame and ice within. I wrested control away from the automatic flow it had followed and forced the strange feeling to work for me. My 50 points in mental weren't for show. I could feel the synapses in my mind becoming sharper as the icy pain receded. All my new brain power was focused on understanding this new sixth sense. Da-dum. There you are. I pinpointed the source of my new heartbeat, directly at the base of the sternum bone. A second heart was thrumping. This heart wasn't physical, but it was still cycling something through my body. Unknown pathways were highlighted by the sensation, and I mapped them all without interfering with the river of power within. Once I felt confident I understood the strange flow, I took action. The moment I became involved, the cycle ground to a painful halt. I started to gasp, the process already as important to me as breathing. My new strength and speed disappeared almost immediately, and I fell to the floor. With a mental struggle and heave, I dragged the energy inside me through the pathways I had just memorized. After a few revolutions of this, my new attribute baseline returned to normal. I breathed a sigh of relief. Then, curious, I pushed the river to make it go faster and faster. My muscles started to vibrate with energy. Skill unlocked. Mana control. The foundations of any and all magical ability. Children born into the system are capable of this from a young age. With a ding, a new prompt appeared and caused me to lose concentration. Reading it wasn't strictly needed, as a surge of information appeared right in my memories. Still, I was affronted. Wow, okay, that was unnecessary. I didn't have anywhere to aim a middle finger, but I carried one in my heart. Fuck you, system. Actually, it was an interesting piece of information, but I still felt like the system was telling me that my accomplishments weren't that impressive. The new understanding gained made controlling the mana within as natural as doing simple mathematics, even if the subject was completely new. I consciously repeated the important information to myself aloud. Mana exists everywhere. Actually controlling it isn't strictly necessary, but there is a clear advantage. If two people had the same attributes, the one with even rudimentary mana control would perform better than the one relying on their automatic mana. The river within me is called mana. Mana control is the conscious manipulation of the river within. And with mana control, I can do this. Punctuating my last word, I surged my energy into my fist and swiped my hand at the tree trunk. It may have been a thin birch, but I was still shocked when my hand simply passed through the wood like butter. I leapt back, physically powerful, even without using my mana to make me stronger. The tree fell slowly and with a loud slam. A dark shadow fell from the tree before it hit the ground. I froze, unprepared in a moment of pure exhilaration as it turned into terror. Before I could even think, the shape launched itself at me. I flew back into the wall of the cafe, thankfully hitting brick rather than flying through the glass to my left. My breath was knocked out of me, but I got a look at my assailant before it was on me again. Is that a goddamn ninja turtle? End of chapter 3. Thank you for listening. For the foreseeable future, I'm planning to release chapters of Forged by the Apocalypse on Thursdays and Fridays, and in between I'm going to try and do some other stuff, though I'm not fully sure how that will look yet. If you did enjoy the chapter, please feel free to leave a like or a comment. If you do end up subscribing, I am eternally grateful, and I will see you tomorrow.